Hello everyone, welcome to The Rundown. Thanks to AGL, agl.com.au for all your energy needs. The band is back together again. The Norm Smith medalist premiership player Andrew Embley and 7 News Ryan Daniels. Boys, the wash-up from the Derby, fair result?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we implored Fremantle last week to make a game of it, and they definitely did that. But on the West Coast side of things, really good teams have 3 or 4 games a year where they win ugly. They just get enough done. The average teams lose those games. So I think West Coast just did enough to get the 4 points, but it's 4 points.
Wasn't the prettiest game of football, but a lot of credit needs to go to Fremantle. They really slowed West Coast ball movement down, but it's always a good sign when you can do enough to win, not being at your absolute best. And I think West Coast did that on the weekend.
Shannon Hurn won the Glendinning Allen Medal. No one really disputes that. Both coaches gave him top votes in the Coaches Award. Where does that set him up after the first month? Can I ask you, Ryan, who leads, do you think, the John Worsfold Medal?
I think Hurn would be really close, but for me it's Brad Shepherd. He's been among the best in the first 4 games in every single game. He's averaging career highs in disposals, marks, and uncontested possessions is the interesting one for him. He's really upped his rate in terms of finding space and getting his hands on the ball a little more. Typically he runs at about 3 to 1, uncontested to contested, and now he's running at about 4.5 to 1, which is a big increase. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot for a guy like Brad Shepherd, normally more of a close checking player. And don't underestimate narrative in voting for these things. The coaches would be sitting in that box going, geez, Shep, God, after last year he's really bounced back and he's playing really, really well. Those votes matter as well. So I think Brad Shepherd would be going really, really close, but Hurn's been very, very good.
Well, at the start of the year, we spoke about who was going to win the John Worsfold Medal. I mentioned a guy called Tom Barrass, and you both laughed at me. Well, after 4 rounds, I think he's actually leading it. He's been very, very good. Now, GWS game, when West Coast were under the pump early with all those inside 50 entries, he was the one that stood up. Did another job on Mason Cox against Collingwood. And Tim, we spoke about at the end of the Derby how good he actually was. We know historically that coaches vote for players that play their role, and I think Tom Barrass is playing his role as good as any West Coast Eagle at the moment.
Fair to say, I don't agree with a lot of the stuff that comes out of your mouth. But I've written down 2 words. Tom Barrass will be leading the club champion after a month.
Wow.
The 1% efforts, very rarely beaten on a one-on-one. It's a very defensive-minded game at the moment. There is no forward that's jumped off the page over the first month. The midfielders is a good spread and they get a lot of the votes and they get a lot of the accolades. But as we saw in the Derby, there was a lot of back 50, or as they say, D50 action, and that's where a lot of the votes came. I agree with you, Wack. I think Tom Barrass has been the standout for the first month.
Do you guys subscribe to, with big awards like this, All-Australian is often talked about in this way, that you need to have a couple of years in a row where you're really close? So for Barrass to go from being, I reckon he would have been just outside the top 10 last year, to winning it would be a significant leap. Whereas someone like Brad Shepherd has been in the mix-ish around that 5, 6, 7 range for a couple of years now. Do you subscribe to that? Do you think maybe this is the year Barrass puts himself on the map, and then next year or the year after he can win one?
Well, I think the fact that he put himself on the map grand final day, so I think that's almost gives him like a year because he was so good on grand final day. I think he was the best key defender on the ground. So everyone stands up and notices Tom Barrass from that performance, and I think that's actually followed through for the first 4 rounds.
And interesting enough, when you talk about All-Australian, with no Alex Rance now, there's a spot available for someone. And all those judges on the All-Australian committee will be looking for a key defender like Tom Barrass. So anyway, Tom Barrass for us. You believe it's Shannon Hurn stroke Brad Shepherd?
Mm-hmm. Brad Shepherd. Definitely Brad Shepherd for me.
Alrighty. And a fallback on Shannon Hurn, nothing like sitting on the fence. Interesting enough, can I just ask you a question without notice? It's been since the 28th of the 3rd on your Twitter account, you've not tweeted once about the West Coast Eagles. You've got something against them at the moment?
Is that right? Well, look, I'm unbiased. I don't really sit there and think, geez, I need to tweet about West Coast or St Kilda or Fremantle or Geelong or anybody. If a thought pops into my head, I'll tweet about it.
I just know you love your stats. I've just done a bit of homework on that one.
I'll tell you what, I'll find you an Eagles stat, Goss, and today I'll put it out there.
That'd be really fantastic. All right, we're talking Good Friday footy. We're also talking about the balance in the first month. Embers, West Coast, they sit 3rd, they're 3-1, they weren't great in the first week. Have they got it right since? And they're in exactly the same spot last year.
Well, I think this is going to be West Coast's greatest challenge this year. They've got so much depth. Now, at the moment, when you look at their forward line, they're playing 3 talls, they're playing 2 genuine ruckmen as well. So, is that the best balance? At the moment, you could say 3-1. It's actually going pretty well. But I think there's going to be times this year, and tomorrow night is expecting some rain, so there could be a late change. But I'm not quite sure if actually playing really tall football at the moment is the best thing for the West Coast Eagles. Now, does Oscar Allen deserve to be dropped? Absolutely not. But I think there's going to be times this year where West Coast are going to have to look at going potentially a little bit smaller, especially when Willie Rioli is available. The other one I want to speak about is Dom Sheed. Now, on the weekend just gone, Dom Sheed had to go to half forward. Now this time last year, Andrew Gaff was keeping him out of the side. Now that Gaff's back in the side, Dom Sheed playing more of a half forward role, he's not a half forward flanker. So West Coast got to find a way to get him back on ball. I thought the game on the weekend just gone, he had minimal impact, and I thought that was purely because of position.
I think they've got it right, but it's super delicate. And we saw that last week. Lewis Jetta comes out of the team, Josh Rotham comes in. Now, Rotham's quick, same as Jetta, but they're a very different style of player. What Jetta does at the moment is he takes the game on, he's really penetrating with that kick, he takes risks. Rotham at this stage is a close-checking defender, stays with his man and tries to play it pretty safe. So I think what we saw against the Dockers was that they lost some of that pace and the ability to take the game on because they do play a bit like robots. The guys like Jetta are important. So what we saw is the balance, I think it's right, but it was almost wrong against the Dockers because of one change. And that's how much you can change things with just one switch.
Yeah, interesting enough, you talked about Oscar Allen. I saw Jake Waterman playing that entire waffle game pre-game to the Derby, and I thought he was outstanding with 5 goals. He plays a little bit, albeit he kicked 5 goals, he does play higher up the ground. He plays up more on the wing, almost got a bit more mobility than Oscar Allen. One thing about Jake Waterman is he basically has the world's biggest shorts, and I'm not too sure whether the club has shorts that big for an AFL footballer, but they might have them at a waffle level. But have a look at the size of those shorts. They are absolutely massive. They've played only 17 players at West Coast have played every game. They've played 27 players, so they're still trying to find that balance, and obviously they're a month in. I think they would be rapt to be in this situation where they're at after the first month. And as I said, this time last year, similar situation, 3-1. I like what they're doing. The competition is a lot tighter, so you cannot afford to lose a couple of games back to back.
And it's going to get really complicated very soon. When Willie Rioli's back in that mix and Nick Nananui's back in that mix and Hickey's playing pretty well.
But that's not complicated. That's not the word I'd be looking for. That would be the absolute P.
Oh, it's a good complication. Yeah, it's a great complication, but it's still going to be a tough meeting.
Yeah, true. It's a positional position I'm not too sure Adam Simpson would like to be in. Alrighty, Scotty Lysett, looking forward to seeing him in action. Premiership player for the football club. Ryan Daniels, was it the right move for him?
Absolutely. He got paid. Scotty Lysett, a player at the level of Scotty Lysett, is going to get maybe, if he's lucky, one chance to get a contract like that. Reported at 5 years, $600,000 a year. This is a guy who, over the last couple of years, spent time in the waffle because they weren't sure if he was in their best team. Vardy and he were almost on neck and neck last year. Nick Nat is going to come back at some point, hopefully stays healthy. Scotty Lysett had to take this opportunity. He walked away with a flag, and I'm sure he has some small regrets about maybe wanting to try and win another one. But look, that money, he had to take it. There's absolutely no way you could say otherwise.
I'm not sure about that. I think players don't necessarily play for the money.
Oh, come on.
I honestly believe, why would you want to leave the West Coast Eagles right now? I mean,
for $600,000 a year.
This group, why would you want to be a part of that? And I think Scott Lysett, unfortunately for him, made his decision maybe round 15, 16 that he was going to leave, okay? After he won the grand final, he was backpedaling. He wanted to stay. And I know behind the scenes, West Coast were trying to find a way to be able to keep Scott Lysett at the club. But unfortunately, you're right, there was no money in the salary cap. And yes, the offer from Port Adelaide was great. But at the end of the day, why would you want to leave West Coast right now? I'm not quite sure you would.
I just think that we're not even 100% sure if Scotty Lysett were here now and Nick Nat in, say, 3 weeks is ready to play, how does he even fit into the team? Vardy's not in fantastic form. Hickey obviously wouldn't be here if Lysett was. But it just gets a bit messy. And if he's running around for the Eagles waffle side at Lass Lane and he's turned down $600,000 a year to play for, say, $350,000, $400,000, I reckon he'd be filthy at himself because he's already got a flag.
Tough question. But is he that good?
I think he's actually played some pretty good football at Port Adelaide.
Is he $600,000?
God, no.
At Port Adelaide, yes, he is, because that's what they're paying him, aren't they? So if someone's prepared to pay someone a certain amount of money, then that's what they are worth to that club. Now, he's not worth $600,000 to the West Coast Eagles, because that's the reason why I didn't stay.
Okay, let's take the money out of it. Is he that good?
No, he's not. But the money does matter. You're right. You said the market value is what people were willing to pay you. But simply, he's not that level of player. He's not. He's a fantastic soldier. He's a guy that if you don't have a star ruckman, he can plug a hole for you. And he's a very decent AFL footballer, but he's not worth $600,000 a year, and he's replaceable. This is the thing. For a guy that's earning that much money, you need to almost be irreplaceable.
Port Adelaide would be rapt to have him right now because I think his first 4 games for Port has been really solid.
And he's a premiership player. You can't take away that at all from a very good club. Okay, so we're going to see him in action. Good Friday footy, under lights, taking on Port Adelaide West Coast. Port Adelaide, I don't know what to expect of Port Adelaide. Boys, how do we see this game unfold?
Well, Port Adelaide started the season well. They've lost their last couple. They'd be really disappointed with that. 2 games that they would have expected to win. Now they're looking down the barrel of losing 3 games in a row. I think they're going to be very difficult to beat West Coast at home. I think they're going to be difficult to beat all year. So on the back of that, I think the Eagles will be too strong and they'll win by 4 or 5 goals.
I don't think I'll be tipping against West Coast at Optus for the rest of the year, but Port Adelaide, I don't think I'll be tipping them even if I was not that high on West Coast. Westhoff is struggling a lot. It is Easter weekend, so the man who looks like Jesus may lift. Who knows? And some of their younger players are just starting to hit a bit of a wall after what's been a great start. So for me, it's West Coast by about 3 or 4 goals. As I said, I don't expect them to lose too many at Optus, if any at all.
So the West Coast Eagles and Port Adelaide tomorrow night. Good Friday footy wherever you are. Hope you enjoyed. Well done, Ryan. Thanks to you, Wack. Congratulations on... Well, Tom Barris and I agree. I think we'll mark that as a watershed moment on the rundown. The rundown for AGL for your energy needs. Go to agl.com.au. And whatever position you are watching the game, enjoy.